So this is our first session wherein we will be getting into the weeds of understanding what digital accessibility is. By the end of today's session, you will have a sound understanding of what disability is, what are the various types of disabilities, what are the different types of assistive technologies that they use to use the internet today, what are the different theoretical models. This is critical to understand why digital accessibility is different from the general infrastructure accessibility. We will also dig further on what digital accessibility is, why do we need it, and how we can achieve the digital accessibility aspect. We will also touch upon the different assistive technologies, what kind of technologies are used by different people with disabilities, and then we will talk about the different laws and standards that we have to focus on. Tell me one thing, when you hear or read this word disability, what comes to your mind? I have asked this question to hundreds of people. The answer that we usually get is the limitation of the human body. Either a person is on a wheelchair, either a person has no vision or loss of vision. It's always sticking to the limitation of the human body. It's never talking about the limitations that we as human create for them. This is where disability is a spectrum, and it has three different buckets. Permanent, that a person could be having no vision at all, a person born with color blindness, a person who is deaf, a person who has no hands, irrespective of the reason, either he or she was born without hands or met with an accident and lost both his hands. Anything that has to do with the permanent condition of the human body is categorized as permanent disability. Then we have temporary disabilities, wherein a person has gone through an eye surgery in which he or she is required not to look at the screen for next 2 weeks. In that case, they are dependent on listening only. Similarly, for ear surgery and fracture, in case you met with an accident, you got a fracture, you are disabled to use both your hands to operate with keyboard and a mouse. You're only using one hand at a time. Similarly, the third bucket or the third category is situational. If you are a work from home parent, you might be holding a kid, right? In that case, you're only using one hand. Or if you and I are at a busiest airport and we want to listen to a video, you might be dependent on closed captions. You might not be having your earphones with you. So disability is a spectrum with three different buckets. And this is where it is critical to understand the different theoretical models. I would have covered all these different models, but sticking to our agenda for the day, medical model is one of the critical models that we need to understand. CDC, or Centers for Disease Control, defines it as the limitation of the human body. I'm going to highlight some of the keywords and this definition. They all talk about the limitation of human body. They are not talking about the environmental conditions that we create, disabling them to perform the same task. Now, this medical model is critical because it defines the legal baseline for who qualifies for the government assistance programs. But digital accessibility comes into picture when we talk about the social model. Social model, as defined by World Health Organization, focuses on the factors that we as humans have created, disabling them, be it your public buildings, transportations, or any social support. In this, they are talking about the environmental barriers that we have created. Now, if we talk about the digital world, are the buttons keyboard accessible? Is the color contrast good enough for a user to scan the entire page? Is the button being read out by a screen reader? Those are the responsibilities of a developer to ensure that those infrastructures are accessible to the end users. With that, let's move forward. Let's define what digital accessibility really is. It's the process in which we are creating web applications, mobile applications, or any other form of digital product, be it your documents like PDFs, Word documents, your kiosk systems. That is anything digital that should be built for people with disabilities, providing them equitable access. The thing that I have highlighted is talking about equitable and not equal. And I will explain it shortly why I'm saying equitable. And the best way to explain is using this image on your screen. On your left, it talks about equality, providing one box to each of the users. But the real challenge is providing equitable experiences. And that's what we should strive for. You cannot provide equal experience to a person who is visually blind. You cannot, you simply cannot, right? They cannot see it. In that case, you're providing equitable experience through different senses. You are enabling them to listen to the content present on your screen. That's the equitable experience. Let's talk about the different assistive technologies that are out there. Now, there can be a number of disabilities. As Zara mentioned at the beginning of the session, right? No human being on this planet Earth is without a disability. But does that mean we have to code for every single one of them? That's technically not feasible. In that case, there are broader categories that we have to take care for the online digital world. So 4 major categories are cognitive disabilities, hearing disabilities, visual, and mobility. Let's go over each of those to understand what kind of assistive technologies are available to aid them and provide equitable experience. People with mobility disabilities, people who have limited motor capabilities, they use keyboard because for them it's very challenging to use the pointer accurately. They might be having stammers, or there will be users who are not having all limbs, right? In that case, keyboard becomes critical. Now think about a person who is a war veteran who lost both his arms in that war, right? How will they use keyboard? It's very challenging because to use or to operate a keyboard, you need fingers. For them, we have something called a switch device. They can configure white button as a tabbing to tab forward. They can configure the yellow button as an enter key. So they can use white key to tab forward, and when they are on the required call to action button, they can press enter on the yellow button. This type of assistive technology is used by people who do not have hands, have limited mobility, or have some temporary issues accessing your mouse. The next one we have is for visual disabilities. People who have no vision at all, or people with low vision, color blindness, and people with no vision and hearing. Screen readers, you will be surprised to know, are not only used by people with no vision. That's pretty obvious that they are dependent on something to listen to. But people with low cognitive disabilities are also dependent on those. People with ADHD, dyslexia, they also use screen readers just to double ensure that whatever they are looking at is the right thing that they are listening through. So that's what they use screen readers for, though. Commonly used screen readers are JAWS, NVDA. These are most prominent on your Windows. Then you have VoiceOver for Mac machines, VoiceOver for your iPhones, and TalkBack for your Android devices. The keyboard that you are looking at now is the refreshable keyboard. This is when your screen reader is running, it translates that text into tactiles. Imagine a person who is both blind and cannot hear. They can feel the content. And in our next session, when we cover the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, I'll walk you through the 4 principles. The number 1 principle, just to give you a sneak peek, talks about perceivable. There are 3 ways you have to make your content perceivable. As a user, I should be able to see it, or I should be able to hear it. And lastly, I should be able to feel it. See it is for regular users like you and I are looking at the screen. Hear it when you turn on a screen reader and are dependent on the content being read out. Feel it when you are using these refreshable keyboards. Moving forward, we have people with hearing disabilities. And this is where we have to make use of features like closed captions. Now, for you and I, it would be a good to have feature, right? But for people who cannot hear, who have loss of hearing, they are dependent upon the text so that they can understand the context. Now, there are 2 different types of closed captions as well. We call it as closed captions and open captions. Anything that you see with a button with CC, that means those are closed captions. You have the ability to either turn them on or turn them off. For some, turning on a closed caption might be distracting. That happens to me most of the time. When I turn closed caption on, I'm simply reading the text. I'm not focusing on what's happening on the screen. That could be a distraction for people with low cognitive abilities, right? So always aim for closed captions. On the other hand, you might be using social media. You see a bold text whenever a narrator is saying something, and there is no capability for you to turn them off. Those are hard coded or hardwired into the editing itself. Those are called open captions. Always strive for closed captions because it gives freedom to your end users to turn them on or off. The last one is cognitive disabilities. As we have discussed it earlier, right? People with low cognitive abilities also make use of screen readers. They also use assistive technologies like text to speech, wherein they are simply giving commands rather than writing it by themselves, helping people with low cognitive abilities. To the different laws and standards. Let's begin with the United States. We have Americans with Disabilities Act. It applies to all state and local government and private businesses that are available to general public. Anything that is publicly available must be ADA compliant. Now, internally, what are the different standards that they are adhering to? As you might be already aware, WCAG 2.2 is the latest standard out there. It has been sitting out there for more than 2 years now. But ADA, they are still sticking to WCAG 2.1. Same is the case with Department of Justice. Earlier this year, DOJ confirmed that they will be sticking with 2.1 single A and double A. Now, the difference between WCAG 2.1 and 2.2 is of only 9 new success criteria that were introduced in 2.2. Moving on, we have Section 508. This is applicable to federal agencies and contractors. Interestingly, they are still sticking with WCAG 2.0 AA. You might have heard about DHS Trusted Tester certifications. Department of Homeland Security, they provide certification for testers who can apply for jobs saying, okay, we are certified by them. They are also sticking with 2.0, which is way old. The third one is Communications and Video Accessibility Act. This is more for telecom or video programming for that industry. And there is not certain whether they are 2.0, 2.1 or 2.2. And then to end up, we have state laws. California has their own accessibility laws, right? They can range from 2.0 to 2.1. Then we have for European Union. Till date or before EA came out, we were adhering to EU Web Accessibility Directive. There is no law in European Union. They call it directives because they gave authority to individual country to define their own laws. But these are more of directives. There, they are using EN 301549. Now, you're not required to memorize all this, but just for your information, internally, it refers to WCAG 2.1 AA. The latest one, the latest directive is European Accessibility Act, which requires EN, which is internally using 2.1 AA, plus the additional criterias. Okay, so if somebody is saying, okay, we are 100% WCAG 2.1 AA compliant and we are operating in Europe, that means we are covered. No, then you are not covered. You need to have taken care of the additional steps. Then we have for Canada, Accessible Canada Act. Again, internally, it's using WCAG 2.1 for references. And there is specific law for Ontarians, similar to California, right? They have their own state law. And they are sticking with 2.0 still. I mean, they are not using 2.1 or 2.0. Any questions before I move to India? They do have laws, but they are not that strict about it. Most recent development that we have seen is with SEBI. They have given directions that every application that is part of their ecosystem should be compliant. And by December 15, they should hire accessibility experts. So India is also working in this direction actively now. The next segment about the misconceptions related to digital accessibility. So the first one, my business is small. ADA does not apply to me. Is that true? So it is applicable to any service or any platform that is publicly available. The next one is, I don't sell products online. I have a very static application wherein I'm promoting myself. It's my portfolio, let's say. But if it is publicly available, it is required to be fully compliant because that's considered as public accommodation. Next one, we don't have disabled customers, so we don't need this. Plaintiffs are not always the actual users. They are here just for easy money, targeting those specific applications that do not adhere to people with disabilities. We have zero issues with automated plugins. I used Wave, I used Google's Lighthouse. It says 0 errors. Why should I bother about accessibility? My new and modern website is automatically accessible. So I hired a bunch of smart developers, right? They are using cutting edge technology, so it should be compliant. Unfortunately, that's not the case. New does not mean accessible. My developers told me everything is ADA compliant. You tell me, does code buy that as an argument? I have an accessibility overlay. The biggest misconception. Overlays are not compliant. They give you a false impression that it is making the application compliant. Accessibility will cost too much. That's true in a way, but if you compare it with the cost of the lawsuits, the pain that you have to go through on fixing the already publicly available application, it's way more expensive. We are not responsible. Our developers and designers built it. You and I know business will be held responsible for it. Okay. So in our next session, we will start with the accessibility success criteria. Because unless you know what you are testing for, you will not be able to test it in the right way. Okay. So we will go over single A and AA success criteria, because those are the only ones that are used when testing the application in the real world. AAA is like climbing the Mount Everest, not required for everyone. And it's very rare finding an application with AAA compliancy level. So that's where we will begin in our next session.